The reading is from St. Luke 23, from verse 26 to verse 43. It's Luke 23, verses 26 to 43. And as they led him away, they laid a hold upon one Simon, a Cyrenian, coming out of the country. And on him they laid the cross, that he might bear it up to Jesus. And there followed him a great company of people, and of women, which also bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus, turning unto them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming, in the which they shall say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bare, and the paps which never gave suck. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? And there were also 2 other malefactors led with him to be put to death. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him, and the malefactors, one on the right hand, and the other on the left. Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. And the people stood beholding. And the rulers also with them derided him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be Christ, the Son of the chosen of God. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him and offering him vinegar, and saying, If thou be the King of the Jews, save thyself. And a superscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew. This is the King of the Jews. And one of the malefactors, which were hanged, railed on him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other, answering, rebuked him, saying, Dost thou now fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? And we unjustly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man hath done nothing amiss. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, Verily, I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise.
A little look this far. We've looked at the last Sunday, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and then this morning we looked at 3 of the Beatitudes that Jesus spoke of, about the persecuted, about the peacemaker, and about the pure in heart. And I wanted to have a little look at the reading that Christine kindly took for us in Luke 23, and those verses there. They were verses that we're all well acquainted with, I'm sure, or a great number of us are well acquainted with it. And what really struck me is how all those 3 attributes are found in the chapter or the verses that were read, and the different things that come out there. And so I just wanted to have a look. We've had the Sermon on the Mount. This is the Sermon on the Cross. It's exactly the same sermon, but he's not saying anything. It's just him fulfilling exactly what the Beatitudes said. He said it would be persecution for those that would live a life that was different to the world. And persecution was his loss. He said that the persecuted would also be peacemakers. That is, those that are able to bring peace to others. Not between others, but in others. You've got to start from inside to know peace. It's not about knowing peace outside, it's peace inside is the one that really counts. And then it talks of the purity of heart. So we'll just have a little look. I'm going to swap them around just a little bit. We'll look at persecution first, then purity, then peacemaking. And we'll hopefully see all 3 on the cross there. I apologise this morning. Roger has always told me, you never apologise for preaching, but it did catch me by surprise that it was 10 to 12 this morning. And so, but Dorothy reprimanded me again tonight, so you're stuck till about 8 o'clock. You've got no choice. You've got no choice. I'm going to apologise for it. That's it. So it goes with it. But It's a good job they didn't have you on Tuesday night, Tom, because they would have had you then at the end of the service then. You do feel duty-bound in one sense to thank people for listening. It can be, as far as the preacher's concerned, you always worry how it's going to be, how it's going to go. I wasn't particularly looking forward to this morning with the subject, because it wasn't the type of subject that would leave everybody up in the air, and lost in love and praise and worship to God. I was thinking in my own mind, we'll have communion first and maybe preach second, but I left it as it was. And anyway, I do appreciate what God can do. We trust that his words will be an encouragement to us. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, especially, the three gospel writers, besides John, tell of the sufferings of Christ, the persecution that came to him. And it's persecution that we're going to look at first. In Matthew's account, we're told that the soldiers, they did quite a number of things to him. The first thing we are told, they took him. Then it says they stripped him. Then it says they crowned him. Then it says that they spat on him. Then it says that they struck him. Then it says that they mocked him. And so you see in that short little statement that Matthew makes, a little concise verse, it says they took him, they stripped him, they crowned him, they spat on him, they struck him, and they mocked him. That's within the quarters of the Praetorium, the place, the guardhouse there. And the soldiers did. Can you imagine how intimidating it was there? It says all the garrison came together. I don't know how many's in a garrison. Well, if that's a measurement of soldiers or whatever, I don't know. But imagine how intimidating that must be. To have been one against a garrison that were just swarming him with noise. The hubbub. It must have been so intimidating. And they did all those things to him. He was persecuted. It says concerning the people that were passing by when he was nailed to the cross and ascended up or was lifted up. It says, and the people passing by blasphemed him. They looked at him and they blasphemed him. The chief priests and scribes and the elders that were looking on mocked him. And in the way the one writer puts it, even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him. Notice it's plural, not singular. The robbers reviled him. Now I know in a moment we're going to look at a thief that is not going to be reviling, but it's clear that something happened on the cross. Something happened on the cross. You see, it's never too late. It's never too late. You say, well, what life can I offer? What more can I give? It's never too late. Never too late with Jesus. And so we find here that he's persecuted. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And notice what he says to the priest, or to the thief at the end. Today you'll be with me in paradise. Heaven was his to give. And so we read on and says, blessed are you when men persecute you and revile you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets that were before you. And here he is, taking all upon himself, the persecutions, the sufferings, all the different things that went on. We won't go into the details, but on the cross, he was persecuted. He was persecuted on the cross. Next we come to purity. I'm just moving it just to change a little bit, but we'll bring all three in together. This is what Peter says. Christ suffered for us. Christ suffered for us who committed no sin, neither was any deceit found in his mouth, who when he was reviled, reviled not back. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. You see, he was suffering, he was persecuted, but he was pure. He was pure. We're told that in him was no sin. We're told here, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth. When any of those that came near to him to try and find if there was an Achilles heel, a weak link, a chink in the armor of some sort that denoted that there was some sort of wrong in his life. Even the temple guards, when they came speaking to him and then came back, and the chief priest was shocked that the temple guards had not brought him back, they said, "Where is he? Have you not brought him?" They turned and could only say to them, "We have never heard a man speak like this before. We've never heard it like this before." We're told that when Pilate saw him, tested him, proved him, conversed with him, all the different things, 3 times he said, "I find no fault in this man. I can't find a fault in him." Even Herod, that fox Herod, as Jesus described him, even Herod could find nothing wrong with him. Nothing that he could in some way punish him with. There was no guilt there. And so we find with this man that was on the tree, he was persecuted, yet he was pure. There was a purity there. And we find in the words that Peter said, that when he was reviled, he did not revile back. When he was suffering, he did not threaten at all, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. And we find in Luke's account that he simply says this: when they came to the place called Calvary, they crucified him, and the 2 criminals with him, one on either side. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." What's he doing? He's committing himself to him who judges righteously. We find throughout the cross, he has a number of prayers. My God, why have you forsaken me?" Another prayer. Another prayer. "I thirst." Another prayer. "Father, into your hands I commend or commit my spirit." And then he gave up the ghost. He committed himself to him who judges righteously. He was persecuted, yet he was pure. You see, when the pressure is applied, we looked at purity this morning. We've got ideas of purity, ideas of great grandeur. But purity works out in the house. Purity works out in the workplace. Purity works out in the day-to-day matters. And when the pressure is applied, it allows us to see how deep, how rooted that purity of God is. And here we find, under the fires of temptation, under the fires of persecution and suffering, he did not yield for one moment to sin. Never for a moment to sin. This man was completely without fault, yet persecuted. Isn't it amazing, isn't it? That you would be persecuted for being such a person. And yet that is the reality of the world then. It was the reality of the world in generations before, and it's the reality of the world today. The righteous are likely to be persecuted. Paul says this: all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. You remember the old Open Doors magazines? And it used to be those different names that used to crop up in there. One of them was Georgi Vins. Do you remember that name? Georgi Vins. And he and his church when youngsters would come to give their life to Christ, an elder, a deacon, or someone who was wise in counsel would take them aside and say, now look, you must understand here, when you give your life to Christ, it's not a bed of roses. There are likely to be difficulties. If you're in the classroom, you're likely to be ostracized. If you're in university, you're likely to be kicked out. If you're in a job of some standing, you're likely to lose it. And all the different things, and Brother Vince and Joseph Bondarenko and all these old names of former days, they would sit down the people that were coming to Christ and say, you'll be persecuted, but you'll be blessed. Sometimes we have to make that choice. I don't know how I'll respond under such pressures. I don't know what I'll do. You know, each of us knows the weaknesses that we have, or at least we're acquainted with some of the weaknesses that we have. And I don't like the idea of not being liked. I'm not fussed on that idea. Judith will say to me something, the trouble with you, you always want to be popular. But maybe it is a weakness that I've got. Maybe it is something that the fires of persecution will have to deal with at some point. But here he was persecuted, and yet he was pure. He was marked from head to toe, and yet in one sense, there wasn't a mark on him. He was perfect. Perfect. Persecuted, but pure. Persecuted, yet pure, and making peace. Making peace. We found out last week, I still think it's an astonishing realization to me what a peacemaker was. I was convinced that it was someone like Martin Thomas used to be. Those that were in Ealing would remember Martin. He was quite highly positioned in a group that I still think he used today, called ACAS. They were the people that would bring a company together, the management of a company, and the union to try and bridge the gap and bring peace and resolution to some problem. Southern Rail probably got the equivalent of ACAS working with them today and the union. Martin was in. Now that's what I've always thought a peacemaker was. It's someone who makes peace between two people or two parties. Now in one sense it is. But what it really means is this. It's not seeking to bring peace between two parties or others. It's seeking to bring peace in others. That's what a peacemaker is. And it puzzled me, why would someone who is making peace be persecuted? But when you see the method of making peace is coming to Christ, of talking to people and saying you need to be a follower of Christ, you can understand now why they persecuted, can't you? Well, here was Christ. They tell me he was at his weakest here. Physically, most certainly. Physically, most certainly. One would think in one sense as well that probably spiritually he was probably at his weakest point. When you're weak in your physicality, there's a likelihood that you could be weak in your spirituality. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but there's a possibility of it, that your spirituality might have lacked. But here we find with Christ, he's persecuted, he's pure, he's marked, yet he's unmarked. And on the cross of all places, when his hands and his feet are nailed and his head is bowed, he is making peace in someone. It says this in that description of what we looked at, the peacemaker, in Matthew 5. It says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Now, I love it. Luke picks this up. And in the account, this is what it says concerning the centurion that was stood in that area of Calvary. It says, when the centurion saw what happened, he glorified God. He glorified God. Christ in his death was able to bring the light of God for men to see. even in such a hellish place as Calvary. It says in one of the other gospel accounts that not only he believed, but also his own soldiers believed. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Now watch this thief. We are told in Matthew's account that both robbers reviled him. Both of them flung words at him. From left hand and from right hand they came at him. And the words were coming from people who was going through what he was going through, yet there was no respite. But as time wore on, now there's not a great time that's spent on there, but as time wore on, the one thief could see something different. He could see purity in the midst of persecution. He could see commitment in the midst of, where you would do anything to get out of that position that you're in. And he hears the one robber turning and saying to Christ, if you're the Son of God, then save yourself and us. Get us out of this mess. And the one thief who did not utter a word at this point suddenly interjected. Isn't it amazing? It always amazes me the things that comes into people's mind when the situation is so desperate. There's a conversation going on here on 3 crosses. There's an actual conversation going on. Now, whether he stretched his neck to look across to him, I don't know. But there's an actual conversation. If you're the Son of God, save yourself and us. And then the other thief, who's on the other side of the cross, he calls across and said, listen, we deserve what we are getting. We are guilty as charged. But this man has done nothing wrong. You see again, purity. He'd watched him in the garrison. He'd watched him on the road coming up the hill. He watched him when they laid him on the cross. He heard the words that left his lips, Father, forgive them. He saw the whole body jar as it went down into the hole. He heard the groan, the anguish, the pain. He saw all the things that he was feeling himself inside. And he turned and said, listen, there's nothing wrong with this man. He has not done a single thing wrong. He's persecuted, but he's pure. And the amazing thing in this, when they tell me that God had forsaken him on the cross, then if he's forsaken him, please explain to me how this thief came to this grand conclusion if God wasn't there. The relationship had been distanced. My God, why have you not forsaken me? You and I have been in rooms where we're conscious that though someone is near to us, yet they're a million miles away. You ever had that situation where someone has blanked you? It's a very uncomfortable situation, isn't it? We used to have a girl in the office years ago, I always remember it. Her weapon was blanking. That was her secret weapon. And she was good at it. She could blank you. And it would be so blunt. You didn't matter how many people were up, she'd blank you dead as they come. You weren't there. That's what's going on when it talks about, my God, why have you forsaken me? In worldly terms now. It's not about distance. It's about relationship. And so we find here this thief. He turns and says, this man has done nothing wrong. He is unmarked. And then he turns and says to Jesus, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Listen now, the peacemaker, the maker of peace in the human heart. Assuredly, I say to you today, you shall be with me in paradise. The peacemaker. The peacemaker. On a cross. On a hill find Christ persecuted, we find Christ pure, and we find him making peace. It says concerning the peacemaker in Ephesians chapter 2, see what it says, just one verse and we'll close. Therefore, this is speaking of the thief and speaking of us. Therefore, remember that you were once Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision, by what is called the circumcision made in the flesh by hands. That at that time you were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace and has broken down the barriers. He's broken down the barriers, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, the law of commandments, to create in himself one new man. That new man was on the cross next day. What a wonderful change was wrought. Persecuted, pure, but still a peacemaker. That's the Christ.